Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Showalter, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, since we have no public hearings tonight, I will call the meeting to order. Ask if you all got a set of the minutes, had a chance to review them, the corrected minutes and the good things.
I move that we adopt the minutes as presented.
Second.
With a motion and a second, any discussion, I'm sorry? All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sir, I believe we have that 5-0. The next portion of the meeting is our citizens' comments meeting, where we allow citizens to come and address council to any questions, concerns, or any issues that they may have. Is there anyone here to address council tonight? Hearing none, I'll close the citizens' hearing. We'll go in. Oh, yeah. Then I'll go into the financial director to give the audit report. I was gonna bypass you, Val, I swear. I was gonna give you the night off, but it didn't work.
Well, I know you really look forward to this every year. And I know it's really exciting stuff. If you're an accountant. So I will try not to make this last too long, because I know everybody wants to kind of get out of here tonight. But it does take a little while to go through this. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. Thank you for having me here tonight and being patient enough to listen through all this. So last week I handed out the financial report. It's a big one. So what's in it? It's 87 pages. We're going to talk a little bit about what's in it. This is our third comprehensive annual financial report. Prior to that, we used to issue the general purpose financial statements, which was about 40 pages. The audit opinions for the financial statements are on page 1, and compliance and internal control reports are on page 82 through 85. There's a letter of Prince Mill at the beginning of the financial report, and the management discussion and analysis follows that. And then there's the government-wide financial statements and the fund balance financial statements. And I'll talk a little bit about what those are. And at the end of the report, we have a lot of 10-year trend information on a lot of different areas that talk more about our operating performance and statistics that are long-range, overlapping tax bases and different revenue sources that you might find interesting. So we'll look at the audit opinion, the audit report, how we did with revenues and expenditures, where our money went, how we did relative to the budget in terms of actual revenues and expenditures, and where we are with respect to the fund balance policy, and we'll take a quick look at the economic outlook for the upcoming year. The audit opinion is on page 2, 3, I should say. The audit opinion basically says that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and the standards that we have to comply with. That opinion was unqualified, which is a good opinion. A bad opinion is when they qualify it and say it's fairly presented except for. So there's no except fors, which is good. It also states whether the supplementary information that's in the back of the report is presented fairly in accordance with the standards. On page 82, there's a report on internal control and compliance with GAAS, which is generally accepted auditing standards. And there were no internal control weaknesses or compliance issues that were identified in the report. And then on page 84, because we had a lot of federal grants this year, we have a A133 opinion, which is talks about grants and our compliance with grants and contracts and laws and regulations and all of those wonderful things that we have to do to comply with federal and state grant funds. And that report states that there are no instances of non-compliance. So those are the audit reports. The letter of transmittal is a letter that is supposed to be in English, that gives you a better, broader understanding of what's happening in the financial statements, what we did during the year, some of the high points of what we've accomplished in this past year, and tries to put it more in English terms that is something that you can read rather than looking at the financial statements with columns and rows of numbers. It gets a little overwhelming at times. The management discussion and analysis report follows that, and it, again, is a way of taking different information that's in the financial statements and trying to put it more in English language. If you don't get through any more of the audit report, then to read the letter of transmittal and the management discussion and analysis, because I know this is a lot to read, and if you're not real into reading this kind of stuff, can get kind of boring. But those two will give you a good, broad overview in addition to what we're going to talk about tonight. Then you have the government-wide financial statements, which most of you have heard are GASB 34 statement. That GASB 34 has been around now for 10 or 15 years, and basically what it does is it takes what we look at on a monthly basis in our fund financial statements and tries to take the whole government and kind of squish it down into two financial statements so that you see an overall view of the entire government, its enterprises, its general funds, everything sort of added together so that you get a big picture view of what's happening in the government. It's also on an almost, not quite, almost full accrual basis like most businesses are. So it reports almost all of the liabilities that the town is indebted for, as well as all of the assets. On the fund level, you don't see all of those things. So it's an attempt to bring it all together. In the upcoming years, we're gonna see all the pension obligations listed in that report and reported in there, and it's gonna create a dramatic difference in what those statements look like going forward. And there's several other changes on the horizon that are going to change what's being reported in there. That will pretty much get them to a full accrual, where you'll see everything. They're not quite there yet, but that's where the standards are right now. The fund financial statements are kind of the more current, doesn't have full accrual in it. You see pretty much money in, money out. You see cash that we have today. You see short-term liabilities like our payroll liabilities and those kinds of things, and short-term and capital outlays and more of a short-term time horizon. And that's what you're more accustomed to seeing on a regular basis is the fund financial statements. And then you have the notes to the financial statements, which attempt to give you even more information than what's already contained, give you details about how assets went up, how liabilities went down, what new debt we have, what our retirement obligations are, and a lot of very, very detailed, in-depth information within the footnotes. They can get a little difficult to read because they're very technically jargon, and most of them are required to be put in that sort of a wording format. We try and Englishize it as much as we can, but sometimes we're stuck with what the standards tell us we have to do. And then in the back, as I mentioned before, is supplementary information with a whole bunch of nice trend information that we're trying to track going forward that we want to use in performance measurement to see how we're doing things effectively and efficiently moving into the future and how we've done in the past. So we'll take a quick look at what we did with revenues as compared to prior years. As you can see, we're overall up in our revenue base with the one exception of the enterprise fund that's hiding down here. I think that is primarily from the joiner agreement that changed some of the revenue base that we have. But we had costs that went down with that too, so that's all right.
So that 740,000 is what the difference,
In the general fund, we went up about 740,000.
so about 3%.
It's Special revenues went up about $1 million. That's primarily a lot of the grant funds that we got last year. Cemetery was up about $8,500, and the enterprise fund was down about $82,000.
And that's because of increased burials. The-
Yeah, they had a few more sale of lots, a little bit more in burials and openings and closings. If I recall, it was down quite a bit last year.
That's all we're saying.
With respect to expenditures, the general fund expenditures were down about 1.8 million, and that was really, I think, more of our capital costs that we rolled over. Special revenue expenditures were up. Again, that was our grants, the Huckleberry Trail, and a lot of those expenditures that were in the special revenue funds. Cemetery costs were down to about $26,000, and the enterprise fund was up about $196,000. So how'd we do with revenues according to budget, expenses according to budget? Overall, our budgets for the revenue side, we did a little bit better than what we budgeted. On the expense side, we spent a little bit less than we had budgeted. On the enterprise side, we're not quite sure what happened there with our projection on the revenues. Part of it is the joinder, but part of it was, I think we over anticipated the amount of revenue from our increase in water rates and sewer rates last year. But we're gonna take a better, closer look at that this year and make sure we've got a little closer. That's the first year we've been that far off on our projection for revenue for water and sewer. So we'll take a closer look at that going forward. On the expenditure side, we spent a lot less in water and sewer than what we budgeted, but those were the big capital projects that we have that are ongoing that rolled into this upcoming year.
Does that include the water meters?
Yeah. So where did all the money come from? Primarily our revenues come 20% from water and sewer. Another 20% comes from meals and lodging. 15% comes from property taxes and sales taxes. And charges for garbage services about 7%. And then other intergovernmental revenues, which are law enforcement, streets and highways monies, grants and contracts, those sort of things, make up another 14.5% of our revenue. On the expenditure side, 19% we spend on water and sewer, 23% is in public safety and police, fire, rescue, and inspections, almost 16% in public works, 11% in parks, recreation, and aquatics, and 14.8% in capital outlay. And those are the biggest chunks of our pie. Administrative costs are just under 7%.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry. Are we allowed to ask questions?
Sure.
Go through this. The last slide, you had water and sewer, and the revenue side was just over 20%. And this is saying 19.4 on expenditure. Are we at that point now where it's self-sustaining or whatever?
It's
That's been-
getting closer, but not with the capital. It's on an operational standpoint, it's pretty close to
Okay.
a break-even point,
Okay.
but we're not covering capital.
And Parks and Rec is about constant in the years in the past. And let's say the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's not gone up a whole lot. We've had a little more capital expenditures, but I don't think it's gone up tremendously. It's,
So we're
all
somewhere
of these
around-
areas are pretty much staying in the same area with the exception of the capital outlays and how those capital acquisitions get spread between the different departments every year. So if there's a difference, it's primarily from the capital outlay, because most budgets have been pretty static over the last 4 or 5 years, as far as operational. With respect to fixed assets, we went up about 2 million, in terms of most of that coming from capital projects like the Huckleberry Trail, the storm drain projects, and the water main project. This is reported net of depreciation, so as you recall, last year we actually had a decline, and it was because our depreciation was outpacing our reinvestment. So we came ahead on that this year. With respect to assets and liabilities, our assets are up quite a bit. It's mostly in our reserves and cash resources that we have on hand for the debt going into July of the new year and some of those projects that rolled over. Our current liabilities are down about $2.8 million over last year. Some of that's just a timing thing where we had payroll at the end of 2013, so we have this big payroll liability that went on the books on June 30th. And this year, we didn't have as much going on, and just a lot of other little things that add up to it, but they're all pretty current, and $3 to $4 million is probably about normal for us. The long-term debt went up $3 million, which was the new debt that we took on, less what we paid in debt on some of the older loans. Fund balance, our unassigned balance went up a little bit, our assigned balance went up a little bit, restricted went up a little bit. And these are all categories that we've talked about, what we have assigned and reserved for different projects moving forward. You know, the parks and recs, the columbariums, the Station B, roads and highways, all those little assigned buckets that we have set aside over the years. Non-spendable went down a little bit. That's primarily a result of that number comes from fixed assets net of related debt. So if fixed assets go up and debt goes up more than the assets went up, you'll get a reduction in that non-spendable number. That's primarily what that number is fixed assets minus debt. Fund balance. Where are we with our policy? All these numbers come out of the audit report every year. So as we calculate what our expenditures were in all of the different funds, according to the formula that we put out, our total operating expenditures were $28.8 million. Our unassigned fund balance at June 30th was $14.6 million. The percentage of that is 50.8%, 0.68%. Then from that, we have the rollovers that we assigned is a part of the budget. So the total fund balance uses in the current budget year are $5.4 million, which brings our percentage of expenditures to unassigned at 31.89%. And then from that, we have, and I'm sorry, that's down on the wall, but after we assigned the new reserves, which was like $300,000 for self-insurance that we were gonna set aside along with parks and recreation and a number of other categories, it drops us down to 29.46. In our policy, we said if the unassigned fund balance is less than 30%, a plan shall be developed to restore the reserves in an acceptable manner under the circumstances. And in this case, I think we can see that it's dropping primarily because of what we're assigning to new reserves. And we may want to consider dropping a few of those assignments that we've made this year to bring that number back up. Or take a look at it and see where we are again at the end of the year, but certainly we don't want that number to fall below where it is now.
It's possible we could get back up by just not assigning more monies to that category, is that right, in the new budget?
Yes, or by looking at, I mean, $300,000 is what we set aside initially for the self-insurance reserve. If we drop that down to $100,000 this year, put, you know, $100,000 in next year, that percentage will be in the ballpark where it needs to be. So I think we can adjust that by simply making some change in our assignments of the fund balance. Because other than that, we're just above the 30% mark. You know, obviously, Barry and I are always more comfortable when we have more. Okay, so overall, how did we do? In general, we saw some improvement in all the revenue numbers. Growth was small, but it was steady. The revenues were slightly higher than budgeted, and expenditures were less than budgeted, with the exception of water and sewer. The fund balance increased by just over $3 million, primarily as a result of the new debt and capital project rollovers, and our liquidity is very good. We've met the overall objectives of the fund balance policy and stand at 31.89% of operating expenditures before new reserve set-asides for 2015. And we're just under the target in accordance with our policy. Some of our major initiatives this year included completion of 6,500 feet of the Huckleberry Trail connecting the rec center and the Renville Knolls Bridge. The Diamond Hills Park stream restoration, which restored 2,233 linear feet of impaired stream channel below Independence Boulevard. It also replaced the culverts under Independence with a new arched single-span pipe and included construction of an upper stormwater management basin located on North Franklin to control stormwater runoff and reduce flooding in the 500-acre drainage area. We also did a sanitary sewer rehabilitation project which rehabilitated 1,850 feet of sanitary sewer and replaced 43 sanitary sewer manholes. We also completed our automated garbage system this year, completed the Railroad Street Water Line project, which was 1,060 feet of 6-inch water main, and provides more reliable service to residents on Railroad Street. The water system upgrade on Depot Street consisted of a 9,300 feet of 16-inch diameter water transmission mains and completed connection to the new booster station up from Hungate to the New River Valley Mall. The effective water storage improvement project was completed to improve the town's water supply and maintain compliance with Virginia Department of Health. Included a booster station and 3,600 feet of 6-inch diameter water main. In January, we began the EMS billing program. This past year, we brought in $249,000 in revenue in the first 6 months. Our costs to generate that were $102,000, netting a carryover amount for future acquisition of equipment of about $147,000 going into the current fiscal year. And the program's averaging about $55,000 a month in revenue. We completed the renovation to the treasurer's office with new counters and better security for employees. This will reduce the number of computers that we're using down there and software licenses and be more efficient workspace for the employees. Awards that we received this year: Police Department received the Quick Hitter Ticket Safety Belt Usage Award. The Rescue Department, Chief Coyle was recognized for excellence in emergency services. And in the Finance Department, we earned again our Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for last year's audit. As we move into next year, we've seen some improvement in our indicators, some increases in meals, lodging, sales tax revenues. It's very slow but very steady growth. Virginia in general has not been experiencing the same level of improvement economically as a lot of the other rest of the nation has, primarily because of some declines in federal spending in Northern Virginia. But it does impact us across the state. So, we'll approach it cautiously with some growth. We're looking at stormwater fees coming up for next year and some other revenue things, and we will be starting to meet on budgets in the next 30 to 45 days. My next project after this is done. So thank you to everybody, and I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Thanks for listening tonight, and hopefully it wasn't too long.
Thank you, Val.
Thank you, Val. Val completed her 5 years with the town now, and she said it doesn't seem like she's been here that long, so we haven't beat her up too bad yet. And the next two may get to you, but it's been...
The next 5 will wear me out.
No. We're not gonna wear you out. We're not gonna wear you out till you get to
It's
that
been my
30.
pleasure.
The way I see it, you are pretty happy with the revenue, what we have got coming in compared to our expenses. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm not sure if you can answer this question now, or it's on that, but we're looking pretty good concerning not having any tax increases. Or can we make that statement yet?
I wouldn't venture.
Oh, you're close to that. No, sir. I believe the 20-foot pole is where I'd get into that touching thing. All right, thank you, Val. You do a good job, and your department does a good job. I've been down all month watching them when the taxes come in, and it's, first 5 days of the month, pretty harrowing, as far as I can determine, but they did a nice job with it.
Thank you.
We'll move into discussions by mayor and council members. We need to take action on 2 conditional use permits tonight. The first, a conditional use permit request by Peggy A. Beasley for a flea market with an exception to pave parking at 275 Starlight Drive, tax parcel 529-A-13 in the B3 General Business District. The public hearing was held on December the 9th, 2014.
I'll make a motion that we accept the planning commission's unanimous recommendation for approval, and also a footnote about the pavement. I think their intended use, we don't need to be paving things that create more runoff unless it's absolutely necessary. And I think it's perfectly appropriate to accept the planning commission's recommendation. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Did we have any, we didn't have any exceptions or anything, did we?
It was unanimous from
That's what I
the
thought.
planning commission.
Yeah.
Planning commission, there were 10 conditions.
Okay. All right.
In the planning commission, there was some discussion about how many days a week that they would be doing this, and they gave the confirmation, and I believe it's in the statement there, that they're just gonna be doing it Saturday morning, which, and it has to be under, was it Peggy Beasley's name
Right.
to do anything. So I thought that was, everything came out really well on that.
I thought I read somewhere in that during the prime seasons that we may not want to limit her ability to have one during the week. I think that's, I read it in the minutes, and I think it's, but it's,
I think for right now, that's all she's
yeah,
doing.
and I think that's all she wants to do right now. That's good.
That's all she
Conditions,
said.
the conditions do not limit it to just Saturday.
Yeah, we opened it up, we said, well, if you wanna do more, fine, but then she reiterated it, that she, right now, she just plans on doing it on Saturday.
That's fine. All right, any further discussion? Madam Clerk, would you poll the council?
Councilman Bishop, Councilman Hubbard,
Aye.
Councilman Showalter,
Aye.
Councilman Stipes,
Aye.
Councilman Van Huzer,
Aye.
All right, thank you. Conditional use permit request by Shaw Development LLC for residential use at 2765 Roanoke Street, tax parcel 501-1-26A in the B3 General Business District. The public hearing was held on December the 9th, 2014. Before we get into this thing, Tricia, do you have a, any kind of report on this thing?
I
so you
do,
were gonna
and it was
reserve-
raised by Cord at the Councilman Hall at the last meeting. And he was wondering if we could impose a condition on the developer to do background checks for residential property. And while I could not find anything on point, I did find the standards that we could, a local government has a certain amount of leeway in the types of conditions that they impose under a conditional use permit. And they need to be reasonable and they need to be constitutional. And generally, they have to relate to protecting the public health, safety, and welfare based upon that particular type of use. In this case, I think Cord was concerned because of the location of the potential residential rental property next to a, the
Childcare.
childcare center. And currently, when I reviewed the case law out there, the only real constitutional issue here is a due process one, and one is whether you, equal protection of the laws actually, and whether, they would be similarly treated as to other folks in a similar situation. And whether this is best addressed in a conditional use permit would be something that you would need to determine, but a court could look at it if they decided to challenge that, and what the court would look at is it's reasonable and is it constitutional. And the reasonableness is if the court will claim that it's reasonable under an equal protection claim if it's reasonable and bears a rational relationship to a permissible state objective. So whether it's permissible for you to single out an individual property in this manner versus other similarly situated properties would be something for a court to decide. Regardless of all of that, I did check to see what other things you could do, And one of them is local childcare providers. They can avail themselves of a notification system if they're concerned about registered sex offenders moving into the same zip code, and they can register with the state police and get notification of that, which might be more effective than, you know, subjecting the developer to a requirement that we would have to somehow monitor, and I'm not sure how we would do that. Or, on another thing is that, I mean, I think even court alluded to this, the law already provides that sex offenders cannot reside within 500 feet of schools or public parks that are contiguous to schools. It's a Class 6 felony, so there's already that. And there is also a provision in the Virginia Code that that prohibits sexual offender treatment offices in residentially zoned subdivisions. So there is that one provision that's sort of related. So those are the things that are probably things that would be more appropriate than imposing a condition on this particular developer in this one instance when there's other people out there that don't have those conditions. So, but I'll leave that out to you.
I think Mr. Helms forwarded a copy of their rental policy to the members of the town council that Mr. Rutledge was so nice to provide to us. And it looked pretty standard with most of the others that are in play. So, that being said,
Without trying to break new ground, I would recommend that we go ahead and go forward with the planning commission's recommendation, which was also unanimous, if I remember correctly, and support this request.
I'll second.
have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just had a couple questions about, did we go down and look at the runoff that a citizen mentioned?
Could be addressed as site plan, and
Okay.
yes, we're aware of it and have seen it.
I'm just looking at some of the notes. Parking on the street, just to refresh my memory on that?
We'll keep the no parking signs up the way they are.
Thank you.
And the runoff will be under the more stringent standards now, correct?
Looking at his drawing, it shows that they could put 12 units on that property. Can you put more, or is 12 the max?
The condition says development shall be in general conformity with presented proposed site layout, Patricia Lane, Townhome CUP concept plan dated August 29th, 2014, revised on November 11th, 2014. So if they changed the numbers, we'd consider that not in general conformity for a site to say, it's a huge site and they changed from 150 to 155 or 150 to 148. I wouldn't consider that being out of general conformity with only 12. The percentage, just changing one's a pretty big percentage, so. Now they go down. We never object to them going down.
And the revised plan, all they did was add more parking
Yes,
spaces.
they added 4 more parking spaces, I believe it was.
It's a good time with Councilman Showalter's questions. The new stormwater regulations that went into effect that we've heard from John Burke about and Wayne Nelson, as of 1st of July, that all new developments have to show actually a reduction in runoff in the post-developed condition than in the pre-developed condition. So they're a lot more stringent now, 10 to 20% reduction in, after they develop the property, even if it's grass out there now. They'll actually, they have to incorporate measures to actually reduce the post-development runoff. So I think you're gonna see some, reduction in the type of things we're hearing from new developments because of that.
Okay. Any further comments, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Councilman Bishop?
Aye.
Councilman Hubbard?
Aye.
Councilman Showalter?
Aye.
Councilman Stipes?
Aye.
Councilman Van Hoosier?
Aye.
Believe that to be 5-0. Thank you. Next is status on increasing in-town adult and youth aquatic center participation. I believe, Ms. Caldwell, you gave us a scenario. Do you know where I put mine?
Slap that on there.
I got it. All right, that's good. comments?
I
Questions?
wasn't quite sure what council was looking for with that, with the question, so that is why you have the document in front of you. If you'll recall, back in November, when we met with the advisory board at the Aquatic Center, I did present a document stating different items that we were working on and that we had done. The new sheet that you have tonight kind of gives you some ideas of different options that we have available. I have always looked at the Aquatic Center as trying to get participation through the door overall. I will definitely look at more specific things if you're looking for resident discounts. That's kind of what I would like to hear from you tonight, what you're looking for.
I put this on the agenda because since the November meeting, which I missed, but I saw the outline of the programs, which some of them are on here. How are we doing with that? What have we implemented? I know just from my visits to the Aquatic Center, there's karate classes up there and some other classes, but what have you implemented or plan to implement soon since the November that's gonna get more people in the door?
Well, we have not finished the policy yet between myself and Mr. Epperly on what our discussion was at the meeting. So once that policy is complete, I'll have better direction.
I don't wanna speak for council, but I think that's whatever you got to present to us, for instance, to reduce for residents, which I'm not gonna speak for council, I'm on board with that. But to get more of our residents in the door, that's what I'm looking for in the next year. And I know you're gonna do everything you can, and Terry, you think outside the box, and hopefully Jim and the advisory committee will come up with something that we can get those people in there, and one of the key things I'm looking for is youth participation, town of Christiansburg youth participation, because I do think if we can expand that, get kids swimming, they'll get older and older and older, and then their kids will swim, and then their friends will swim, and word of mouth will spread, and things of that nature. So I'd like to see us really take a good look. And I mentioned last year about rec, and I know we're doing a fitness program my daughter's doing, but I'd like to see us get more into it. Because I don't think that H2 Hokies, even though it's a great organization, I don't think it's affordable for our citizens' children. Sorry. I think we need to really take a look at getting the kids in the door and getting them to swim without having to spend thousands of dollars. It's a great organization, they produce a lot of athletes, but I'm looking for our participation. And that's just my personal feeling.
When this procedure that Terry was talking about gets finalized, that's gonna really give us something to work with to go forward, Henry, and I think we can start addressing things at that time in a much more vigorous fashion. So hopefully that's gonna happen before too long.
We met on it again
I
a
do
couple
want
weeks
to
ago.
add that the costs of the swim team are very expensive, and I would be very willing to share that with council at a point, and just letting you know that the expense of coaches and their salary that's paid, and the travel, for these kids to participate, somebody has to pay that. And fortunately with H2 Okies, it's the parents that fund that, and it is very expensive, you're right. But it would also be very expensive for the Aquatic Center to take that on, which we would be more than willing to do, but there is going to be a huge cost associated with that.
Now, I understand it. I would like for you to look outside the box. The H2 Hokies is traditional. They travel, that's a lot of their costs, but the majority of Blacksburg residents, I mean, they are. There's a very few Christiansburg residents that participate with that. If we have to look outside the box for a swim team, they don't necessarily have to travel. We have the best facility on our side of the state, or if not in the whole state. So, I mean, it's just something to get those, and I'm not saying, Terry, you have to do this, just explore more options, look outside the box. If it's more swimming lessons, and then that feeds into a club that we can offer a severely discounted rate, like we do for our rec programs, because literally, if the parents had to pay for helmets, shoulder pads, uniforms, we wouldn't have any kids playing football in this town, or very few. If football was a club sport, you would have very few
So we would
teams.
be able to subsidize those
Well, I
swimming
want you to look
programs
into
like we do
that. I want you to
Okay,
look
cool.
into that.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying. Anything that you can bring to us that we can get people or specifically youth inside the door, I would be willing to take a look at as a council
Well,
member.
of course, there's a lot of things we can think about in the future, but working with the civic organizations to help fund that, and I'm aware some of them do that. That's maybe something we can look at once we get the procedure in place.
I would think you could look at, with the success we've had, almost a sandlot swimming program,
Mhm.
you know, to where we can, if you can have enough, you could get a couple of teams together, but you can also compete with some of the other, I think Pulaski has, I don't know whether they have any type of local swim teams, but so, you know, as a feeder program, a builder program, doesn't have to be, you know, competing for world championships, but at least getting them there and getting some information, and maybe able to find some pretty good volunteer coaches out of
And
this.
that's what our fitness program is now, as
Mhm.
Mr. Showalter was explaining. It really is a feeder, it could be a feeder program, or I couldn't even tell you right off how many are in that program, but it was really, it came from your idea to start this. That's kind of the beginning of hoping it leads into something more. So we'll see how it grows and, you know, keep behind it. We have a wonderful competitive coordinator, you all know him, Bill Beecher, and, you know, he definitely thinks outside the box, and he's also coach mindset. So, you know, it's interesting discussions with him all the time on how we can move forward.
I will say at fitness program, there's a couple kids from Rafford who are swimming in that. I played soccer with my son, so they're in middle school. They're not old enough to participate at the Rafford High. So that was refreshing to see that one day when I was out there, that people are paying attention to it and coming over to it.
And now we're gonna see the Dedman Center close, so there's different things happening, and people are coming, you know, coming to our center, driving from Whitfield 4 nights a week for swim practices. It's an interesting situation going on.
You know, somebody mentioned there about having a sandlot program. I think they have a sandlot program during the summer. I know my granddaughter swims for Ridgewood, and there's about, 7 or 8 teams in that league, and the Aquatic Center has a team too that play in there. And of course, my granddaughter is 8 years old, and she's been involved in this for 2 years now, and I would definitely consider that to be a sandlot program. And I think this is a good point here too about talking to the PTA on point 3 here and making them available and making sure that they know what's going on. So I think there is things going on right now in Christiansburg here in the way of sandlot and trying to get kids involved. And of course, it's a constant, ever-growing need to keep pushing it and to keeping it alive. But from what my granddaughter does, I watched her all last summer, you know, it's a tremendous little league that they've got there.
I'd agree. It is, my kids swam in the Bluefins last year.
Correct.
But you have kids from Christiansburg who swim on the Ridgewood Club team that's only in the summer, that may want the opportunity to swim during the off hot months, the meadows, things of that nature. And I'm not saying that, not that families can't afford it, but that's a huge, I know even Blacksburg residents who have 4 kids who want to swim for HUA Hokies, but they don't want to invest $5,000-$6,000 into that program. And I'm just looking at the pure demographics from what I hear, the success of the Christiansburg Wrestling program that makes it very inexpensive for the kids to jump in there, our own rec programs. And we did start a program with the fitness, so I'll end it there, that it, to me, is a success. Because it's the first year, and there is some kids, and when you see kids coming from outside of the town, that means they're paying attention to it, there is interest in it, and so, that's it. Just want you to take
I've
a look
always
at
said
it.
the Aquatic Center, to my amazement, I think, you know, the older I get, when I'm gonna look back at the Aquatic Center and see just what you said, Mr. Showalter, the kids in the pool now are going to be the parents. And it's just gonna build a culture in the town of Christiansburg, and in 20 years, that will be the norm. The Aquatic Center will be the norm, and it'll catch on, and it'll just feed into itself, into the families for your residents. I think it's awesome.
And I think all age groups, I agree with everything that Councilman Showalter said, but I think, you know, getting people into play bridge, to take karate or anything that gets them in the door, because as we talked about that workshop, I don't like to use the word detractors, but when you hear negative comments, a large percentage of those people have never actually set foot in there. They just have it in their mind that it's not, this thing, but if you can get them in there, I mean, it changes, to go in that facility, I don't care if you're 8 or 88, you can't go in there and not
They
have
have
it
no
affect you.
idea. All
So-
day today, I think, every time I was at the front desk were people from out of town.
Yeah,
And they would walk and the kids just run right to that window.
right, yeah.
And, they're screaming and jumping up down. The parents will turn and look at me and say, I didn't realize this is what it was in here.
Oh, yeah.
They just had no idea.
But whatever it takes, whether it's surf or turf, to get them in that door, it changes it can help but affect you, let's put it that way. I don't know if it'll change you, but it has an effect on you to come in there and see firsthand what's going on in there.
And I noticed that when we host meetings, people come from all over the state just for a
Right.
meeting, and it's at the Aquatic Center. Wow. They go back to their town for a lot of information. You built a beautiful facility, and any information that you can share with me, what you would like to see happen, I absolutely will accept it.
And I saw in the paper, last week, that I think starting in January, they're going to have diving lessons for kids 6 or older.
Correct.
Right?
For the
And,
public.
I think that's, we have tremendous diving, facilities here, and it's almost untouchable in the state of Virginia.
That's something to forget.
Working on that and creating that, and I think the council, we just are, and we know you're trying, and we want you to keep on trying, and like, as Mr. Showalter said, just keep on thinking in different areas.
Just always keep
And that-
thinking
and
of
that
new
would-
ideas.
That would definitely
Keep going.
please,
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate
Y'all
your
have a good
time.
holiday.
Next is a recap on the town's newsletter. I think it was sent in your agenda packet. They are this edition is going to go out in the January water bills, and it will be a bi-monthly newsletter to fit into with our billing. And I guess as we if we go to a monthly read, then we'd be able to look at having it more frequently. But I think every other month is a good start, getting it out there. And then the other, we'll have paper copies in Aquatic Center, Library, Rec Center, and so on and so forth, and that type thing. So,
It'll be on the website.
on the website also.
And we'll have email notify me.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
didn't ask her that, but I think we might do that.
yeah,
I think you
We said we
mentioned
were gonna do
it.
that.
yeah, I think we can.
Can we get a date when they're gonna have, so that everybody who's already enrolled will have that option to hit notify me? Like me. And I appreciate it, Mike, for putting this on. I actually had it on there because Cord missed the meeting. And I wanted him to see it instead of, have something to say about it.
I was thinking we were gonna get through a lot
Positive,
quicker with Mr. Hall, talking, but we got Hufford down there, so hell, we're gonna be here at 9:30, folks, might as well order the pizzas. Yeah, I think it's good, and I do get copies of the Herndon, Virginia newsletter coming to me, and, it's basically along the same line. with some
I like
pictures.
it. I like it. I really, it's a great start and it's good to see.
Okay. Discussion regarding repairs to the Foreman's Building in Station B.
This is basically a heads up. Our foreman's offices at Station B, there's mold in it. We've had to move all the foremen out. There's 3 still working in the front section. They'll be moving out shortly. And we're getting prices on remediation. So I might be coming back to you for a budget. Well, we'll have to come back to you for money to either do remediate it or tear the building down. So
Where is that building?
it's the one, it's one that has an old digester on it.
Where are we talking? I don't even.
Oh, down in the
Public
Public
Works.
Works Department.
Scattergood.
Okay,
Yeah,
scared.
Scattergood.
Okay.
Station B, yeah. It took me a long time to figure out what
Is
Station
it
B.
marked Station B, or I just have to,
It's, no, it's not. Yeah, actually, I think there is a sign up, says Station. What happened, the original sewer plant's where the skate park was. When they expanded and added another plant down there, it became Station B.
yeah,
And that's what we've always called it ever since, instead of our Public Works Department. But, it's where the Public Works Department is on Scattergood Drive.
And there's a
well, I've
black
gotta be
mold.
old enough to remember that, cause I can remember the sewage up where the skate park's at. So.
Yeah, there's mold.
Okay.
So,
But those buildings are got a few years on them, don't they, Barry?
Built in the sixties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Discussion regarding VML Legislative Day. That was one that I had put on, and, you know, every year, we're invited as a council to go to Richmond and meet with our legislators and talk with them and kind of tell them what's on our mind, and Barry and I have been talking about and I'm gonna contact Ron Rordam when he gets back into town, about possibly holding a legislative day up here with our 3 delegates, the 2 senators that represent parts of our county, about maybe meeting here even before they go back to session, to just have a informal meeting, luncheon, dinner with them, just so we can develop our strategies and let them know what we're looking for, or what we'd like to see happen. As I get closer to that, and I'll have to find out when they go back to Richmond.
14th of January is first week.
Yeah, they go back quick.
Wow, okay.
And the other question I was gonna ask was on the agenda for the liaison meeting in November, which unfortunately I missed. Did you not discuss it then?
I don't think they did. They talked about it. Delegate Yost had brought it up,
Because we had it on the agenda, but I had missed that meeting. So I didn't know whether you had any discussion there.
I think it came up solid, there wasn't any decision made, but, talked to Delegate Yost and Delegate Rush, just get ideas from them, and they're thinking about other ways. Because they've changed the program, legislative days this year, the counties are not gonna be there, and they have a mixer that evening for all localities. And if we have a dinner, you know, for us in Blacksburg, then it leaves other parts of, like Delegate Yost comes, it leaves Giles out of it. Delegate Rush comes, it leaves Pulaski, Bradford area out of it, so it's hard for them to make a decision which dinner to go to, because everybody wants to have a dinner or something and meet with them.
Well,
They
I
sort
just
of
think
get stretched out.
just the sheer expense of going down there. I think Blacksburg's sending 4 council members and the town manager and the mayor, and, you know, it's total about $110 worth of just fees to go, but it's an overnight trip, so then you're buying motel rooms for, you know, so many people, so.
Well,
I agree with you, Mayor Boyle, and I think it is a terrible waste of money, really, too. And I think this would probably be more effective, and we would get to talk to all the delegates better, and it's gonna cost you a tenth of the money and get the same results.
I support that concept. I don't think you'll be able to pull it off this year because of the late date that we're starting. Because if they go back on the 14th, there's no way you're gonna get them. They're tied up now.
But they'll go
Stay
back
back.
into session again. They'll come out and they'll go back at some point during the year, I think, don't they? Maybe we catch them in between.
Well,
I
not
guess all the
necessarily.
votes, all the legislature, and there's very little, very correct me if I'm wrong, there's very little that actually affects us as a town in the legislative end
There's
of it.
less that affects us than it does counties and cities.
Yeah, I would be in favor of trying to get them this year. If we can't get them, we don't go down there, but try to set something up for future years to make sure we have an opportunity to speak with them. I remember last year, I guess it was Delegate Rush, told us that this year he'd be at ours because he did go to Radford's or Pulaski's or whomever it was last year.
And they're very busy during that time.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have committee meetings going up
Mhm.
to 7 or 8 o'clock sometimes, and it's just hard for them to get to a
Now, the
function.
one disadvantage you might have is we've been pretty good at getting Senator Edwards and Smith to come to our meetings. So that would be sort of cutting them out unless we could do something separate. with
Well,
them.
I had mentioned that the 2 senators would be invited because they
Yeah.
do represent parts of the county. I will, try to work on it tomorrow, see if I can at least get an email out to them to see if they have an interest in meeting before they go back. And we'll pick a convenient, night for that to happen if we can.
We had several years, we met with the county and has that ceased? Where we
Yeah.
met?
Oh, that joint, yeah,
The
that,
county government
With the
center, it was
dinner?
perfect.
We
It
ate
was
dinner
usually
too,
the
right?
first week or 2 of December, it was nice and relaxed.
They haven't, I think they've been doing it, they said, I think it got too large, they felt it was too large in,
Okay.
all three governing bodies, and
That was good for not just relations with your delegates, but also the other jurisdictions.
Sure.
I really enjoyed those.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
All right, I'll work on that and keep you posted. If I see a date that might look reasonable according to the invitees, I'll get in touch with you. Council reports, Mr. Bishop,
I don't have anything.
getting on everything, Mr. Van Hoosier?
Well, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a safe holiday season.
Very good. Mr. Stipes?
I ditto, Councilman Van Huzen. That's a good statement. That's all I've got.
I have nothing. Happy holidays.
All right, Mr. Hubbard.
Is that
I
what
know
you
that
want?
it's unusual for council to offer presents to other council members, but I think maybe some of you have on your desk right now a little something from me about, since it's good that we're talking about Delegate Yost and the coming legislation here, and I thought that maybe some of you might want to read this over when you have a little free time this during Christmas. And maybe, who knows, we could maybe even take a step farther in the new year. So I just wanted to do this as my way of saying Merry Christmas to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of, three little things, and darn if I know, oh, okay. First of all, I'm sure council is aware, if you're not aware, that Elizabeth Dillon from Gwendolyn Dillon was appointed to her federal judgeship. I think she'll probably start moving in that direction in March or April. So we'll pick her brain as long as we can, but we got a great backup sitting right there. Second, I wanted to ask or remind, without putting anybody on the spot, do we have all of the financial statements in?
I've got a stack here to go through, so I'll check off. and
Okay,
see
just
what
as a
you say.
reminder that it's out there. And on the January, is it the 13th meeting, Barry? That's the day we meet in January, that Erica Williams will be here to swear Mr. Bishop in for his term this year. I echo all of the council members wishing each and all of you a very Merry Christmas. It's been a good year. I've enjoyed sitting here this year. And I think we have been a very, very cohesive council. We can argue and we can fight, but we still come out with friends and we still make pretty good decisions. So I think that's good, and I appreciate working with all of you and the town staff. Now that I've buttered you up, guys, let's look at the monthly bills. You have a list of the bills before you, either in the agenda packet, I believe they were sent in. Do you have any questions?
I have one, based on page 1 and page 4. Page 1 is Dale's Garage dealing with snow plows for like almost $17,000. And on page 4, one equipment company snow plow for like $3,300. There's a big difference. Are these different size plows?
yes, they're different sizes, they're on state contract,
Okay.
and we buy them depending on what truck, which one's cheapest.
Is that any maintenance on that Dale's Garage? Is there any maintenance, is it maintenance on some of them too, or do we know? It's not a big issue.
Pretty sure those are new plows.
The acquisition of plow and installation.
Okay.
I have a question, not really a question, but I know that I read in the paper today that gas prices are down to a 5-year low. And I was wondering if there's any way, with the amount of gas that we use, is there any way we can, everybody knows the gas price is gonna go up. Is there any way we could get gas and store it right now at this price, before it goes up?
We have gas tanks at the fire department, which are used regularly by the fire department and rescue squad, I think. Gas is 500-gallon tank, and diesel fuel is 1,000-gallon, I believe. And we have a couple portable tanks on some truck, small portable tanks on trucks, and 1,000 gallon tank down our Public Works Department for diesel, off-road diesel. That's really all the storage we have. We've got all the requirements for storage tanks got so stringent, we got out of the business. We moved all of our all the tanks but those. And we actually replaced the ones at the fire department with double wall tanks with leak detection, and they have to be measured daily, recorded, make sure there's no leaks, and it got pretty complicated, so that's why we're on contract now. We piggyback with the county, and they bid it out over 5 years. And in fact, they just renewed it.
And the tanks that we do have, we're trying to keep them pretty full right now at these prices.
Okay. Any other questions about the monthly bills? I'll entertain a motion somewhere.
So moved. We pay the bills.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Certainly there's no one opposed. Progress reports and announcements.
I just wanted to report that James Lanson-Hayes has completed two safety classes. One, fundamentals of industrial hygiene, and advanced safety certificate. These were pretty long courses. I think it took him over a year to get them completed.
Now, who is this?
James Lanson-Hayes is
Okay.
Assistant Director of Public Works, and we're working hard on safety townwide, and our accidents are down, and so we'll stay that way.
Yeah.
Workers' comp. It takes 3 years for your workers' comp numbers to get better.
To
but-
adjust, okay.
And that's all I have, sir.
Very good.
I move we adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn? Got us out in an hour, it wasn't bad, guys.